You may have been wondering how I've been doing some of the effects in my videos recently. Well, today I'm going to show you exactly how I did them. This isn't supposed to be a tutorial, it's more of going to be a breakdown. I'm going to go through the edit, show you how I did the effects, and tell you a little bit about why I shot the footage the specific way I did, as well as why I chose to do the effects the way I did. So we're going to start with this K&F product review. I had quite a lot of fun doing the effects in this one. A lot of them mainly happened during this beginning intro sequence. To start off, let's talk about this little bad boy right here. With this specifically, it was super simple. I shot this using my Edelkrone Head 1, that way I could get the filters to spin, and I had the filters standing by just putting a clamp onto the filter and setting it onto the Edelkrone. In the editing, all I did was simple speed ramping for this. So if I hit Command R, this bottom frame I just left as a clean plate just in case if I needed to do some masking, which I ended up not having to do, but you can see here, it's just a simple speed ramp in, speed ramp out, which then came to the next clip, which had the same exact thing. Speed ramp in, speed ramp out. Now this filter fly-in was actually a lot of fun. I took my slider, set it up across the table, and I actually used my photo camera, put that onto the slider, and then used some of the friction arms to basically have a barbecue skewer that I taped with some green tape that would then go to the filter and join with a suction cup that was on the back of the filter, so that way I can remove that skewer in Photoshop before I made this stop motion animation. When I took the photos, I made sure to do a long exposure and actually move the physical camera so I could get some motion blur in there, and it worked out pretty well, I'm not gonna lie. I'm happy with how that turned out. I completely skipped over the very first clip, so let's head back to that one real quick. In this very first clip where the filters separated from each other, I shot this in an actually pretty funny way. So for this floating filter shot, I actually shot one continuous frame. So the first frame is a clean plate when I stepped out. I just used like a freeze frame of this just to have there so I could do the rest of the masking. As for the actual filters moving, I did stand there and I held my filter on the end of a skewer and I went up and down with my legs and just twisted my wrist in different ways to get the different positions of the filter, so that then I can come in here and mask them out on top of a clean plate. So let's head into this compound clip real quick, just open in timeline. All I did was just mask them out. Let's head into the fusion, and it's just a simple polygon mask. That way I could have the filter masked out by itself. All right, moving on. This one was very interesting. So in order to actually get any of these effects done in the first place, it took a lot of planning. I made sure to sit down with my document and think about, one, what kind of shots I would want, and two, how I could get them done within my technical skills at the moment. So for this one, I knew that I wanted the camera to be floating, and then I wanted to come in and kind of like pick it up from floating. This required me to put it on a tripod. That way I could spin it there and actually just mask it out. Then I would come in and make sure that I did not cross the tripod when I reached over to grab the camera. That way I can kind of mask in both parts and it would work out nicely. And thankfully I could have cleaned up the mask a little bit more, but honestly, it works for what it is. Those were the main effects that were super simple to create. It's mainly done in camera, believe it or not, with very simple edits after the fact. Same with this little floating filter. This is actually the same shot reflected. That way they just came together. I keyframed the motion so that it happens digitally, but the filter itself is spinning. So I shot this on a green screen, keyed out the green screen, and then masked out the filter, and that is what I used to then make the motion come together and turn into the other filter. Now this top-down sequence was very, very nice. I was really happy with how the lighting came out, but we're not here to talk about lighting. We're here to talk about the edit. This was very simple. I had this idea in mind to kind of keep the motion going throughout the entire top-down, so every time that I would move one arm, I would try and have the other arm come in at the same time That way the motion continuously moved. I feel like those little details usually help bring an edit together. Then we got to the more fun part as well. So after I smacked the filter case, then I made sure to actually mask my arm out, which I had a clean plate. So I just used the Magic Mask tool, which is incredible in DaVinci, to mask my arm in the desk behind it. That way it kind of made the filters disappear before the other filter case got masked in to where I could drop it. Then we finish off with a simple mask transition back to my talking head. Now, those are all of the cool effects that happened in there. The rest are kind of just tracking. So let's actually move on to my ND filter guide. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend checking it out. It's a comprehensive guide on all things ND filters. So without further ado, let's head into the edit. Let's start it off with the intro. So this intro was actually pretty much an effect all done in camera. It's called a match cut, so I tried to have the same exact motion in the same exact place, so that way I can cut them together seamlessly. It wasn't perfect, so I added in a digital zoom, that way it can kind of hide the imperfections. For this transition, I had this filter actually in a similar way to the last one where it was just on a barbecue skewer, and I actually just digitally moved this one in because it was just a static shot. Most of the other effects, like the sunglasses dropping down, were actually done in stop motion. So it's minor adjustments to the subject that I'm shooting while taking photos each time I make small adjustments and putting those into a sequence, which then creates a small little movie. And if you guys actually do want any tutorials on how I did any of these effects within DaVinci, please let me know in the comments down below and I'll make a more in-depth tutorial on them. These little transitions that I had in between sequences to kind of give you context on what's going on next was really fun to do, and I actually did them practically. The filters rolling across, I did not fake that. I actually rolled them across this desk right here, so that way I could mask them in with just a simple circular mask in the color page, so that then it could do this neat little effect, which I used pretty frequently in this. And then took it into Fusion, also had the text node in Fusion, that way I can actually also reveal the text, which was super simple with just two different circular masks, one that was helping with the opacity on the inside, so I could darken it as the filter would, and then one to reveal the rest of the text on the outside. Now, these game selectors were interesting. So let me show you the raw footage, and then I'll kind of explain what I did. To start off, all these filters were, once again, put on the Edelkrone on a blue screen, and I just keyed it out and also masked out the stick. That way I can use them floating. Then I went a step further and I actually digitally made them move. So all of this was actually done in Fusion. I also did them in their own timelines. That way I can actually export it as one whole thing to just drag and drop within the main video. So let's go into those timelines really fast. So we have the game selector main. This one I had go pretty much just in a circle with each filter, and you'll notice, like when I come into here, I had to split them up, that way they also crossed over each other correctly and there was no funky weird overlaps, and it would make sense in space. So if I come in here, you'll see that it's just moving in a circular path. Each one is doing this. As for the Fusion clip, I just click into here, you'll see I just shrunk the matte because in the other one I'm actually keying it out. So let's actually open this in its own timeline, and you'll see this Fusion clip is keyed out and masked. So this is going into the garbage matte, this polygon, that way I can just hide the green stick after I keyed it out. So that was for the main one that just spins around. Now, when we came down to the other ones, it was the same exact techniques, except I didn't spin it in a full circle, and I also added a slight Gaussian blur when they went back in space, just to kind of make it more real and believable. Just super small details, super nitpicky. You don't have to do that, but I just prefer to do it to try and really just make it seem like it's there. Plus, Also added the text, which wasn't hard to do since I did that in the Fusion page. Since it's in the Fusion page, it just stuck with this since I did all of the animation actually in the edit page. Now let's head back into the main edit and find our next effect. One of my favorite effects was this entire sequence where everything was handwritten. For this, I actually did in After Effects. All I did was use trim paths to make everything right on, and all of those pages I actually drew out on my little Remarkable 2. That way I could send them as PNGs to myself in order to use in this way. When I actually made them draw on, all of these were just set to a darken blend mode. That way they can show up on this background and be exported to use within this. Before I actually made any of these animations, I made sure to export the video out, at least this segment that had the entire animation, and put that into After Effects so I could actually get the timing correct with the words that were being said. This was probably one of the most fun sequences that I've made, and I definitely hope to do more in the future. Now we come to these callouts. So these callouts, all I did was have one Fusion clip for this. So the Fusion clip was only the raw clip that I turned into a Fusion clip. But if we go inside of this Fusion clip, you'll see that I have a bunch of different groups. So basically all of these different groups contain the mask of the Fusion clip. So I brought the Fusion clip in from my media pool, that way I could have this same exact clip and use it differently. I have my media in one, which had its ellipse, which is its mask, and I did that twice, that way I could also have that stroke on the outside. I made sure to boost up the brightness, that way you could really see what's inside of this mask, and then I transformed it all. That's what I have in each of these groups before I added each of these lines. I did that all throughout this sequence, just using different parts that I really wanted to highlight, that way it could show off what I was trying to explain. I thought this little sequence was pretty fun. So I had each of these clips that I wanted to also like kind of integrate text in. So I just brought it into Fusion and I made sure to just track the filter, and then I used the corner pin method for it so that I can add the text on nicely and it would be tracked to the filter how I'd want it to. Then this bitmap right here allowed me to basically luma key it so that I could have it kind of blend in with the filter itself. And then I used the transform just to get it in the place that I needed it to be. Then we come over here, and once again, super simple, just a bitmap with text, that way I could have it blend into the lens itself. And then I had this other text to where it would just appear. And I had it appear just because I had this global in and out set to where it would just show up. So when it would start is right here at this frame at 904, as you can see here. Then I finished off with this fun shot of the internal NDs of the 6K Pro. I didn't even track because I tried to track it, that didn't work. So all I ended up doing was transforming the text down, and I used the same exact transform for both text layers of work and best. That way I could have them move at the same pace, and then I literally just had the for you just appear on in the same way as the last one. So for this ending sequence specifically, where I was making people disappear, that was all magic mask. And that is all of the effects that I did in both the KNF review and my ND filter guide. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and maybe even learned something from it, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Oh, DaVinci crashed. Sick. That doesn't happen a lot. It's looking like Premiere over here, oh no. Super simple, I guess.